please." Her sob was muffled within the crux of her arm. "Please what?" came the cold, hard reply. Please what? She had no idea. Was she attempting to beg for mercy? A reprieve of some sort? An orgasm she so desperately needed? His censored inside her. Every thought and feeling swirled like a tornado in her mind. The only one she could grasp with any clarity was, how did it come to this? "Really?" she asked. Incredulity infused her tone. "The dishwasher is empty and right here," she said as she pointed to the glass in the dishwasher. Without looking up from his report, he answered, "Then it won't be that difficult for you to put it inside." While his tone remained even, his interest to see how far she would take it was piqued. "Oh, great and powerful Dom, I feel like my life is complete because you leave these meaningful tasks to me. Thank you, Mr. Awesome Dom, for the privilege," she said sarcastically. At this last comment, his inner beast stirred and opened its eyes. "You are most welcome, so." No reply meant the beast could relax, and he laid his head quietly back on his paws. He kept the beast under a strict restraint, that primal being living at his core, ever present, and awaiting the opportunity to be unleashed. She didn't understand the control required to keep that part of himself from her. Just feeling it stir at this mild taunting put him on immediate alert. If only she knew. Then he heard the exasperated sigh and knew she wasn't done. "Little girl, be sure of the next words you utter, for those will be the last before you screams." Her inability to constrain her sarcasm and constant challenge of him often left her ass sore for days. She tried to hold her tongue most of the time, or at the very least, not push too hard or too far. Any other day, and a look, or a single word, "Liza," would be enough of a warning that she was getting close to being considered disrespectful. Any other day, she would have been silenced by his tone. Any other day, she might have crawled to him and asked for forgiveness. But today wasn't any other day. Today she failed to restrain her inner brat. Today was the day her defiance peaked. Today, the foundation of all other days would be set like the first layer of concrete that supports the skyscraper. Today, the brat would meet the beast, and there would be a finality, a victor. Since I can be trusted with such tasks of such importance as placing your glass in the dishwasher, I presume I can be trusted to choose my own damn underwear too. With that, she lifted her ankle-length flowing skirt and flashed the plain white cotton panties she had worn before agreeing to enter the rabbit hole of a world that is D/S. For a split second, she was pleased with her own audacity. Then she turned and saw the flash in his eyes. It was nothing she'd seen before, and her blood froze. The next events happened in rapid succession. As soon as he rose from the couch, her survival instincts returned. He advanced in quick strides toward her. She fled through the partially open back door. Their house abutted a national forest to the mountains. They had no neighbors within a 20-mile radius, but were within a mile of the lake. If it had been summer, there would have been jet skis, boats, fishing, swimming, and various forms of outdoor fun taking place. If it had been winter, there would be skaters, skiers, and ice fishing. But this was neither summer nor winter. Today was an unseasonably warm October. The ground was wet from the small storms that had come over and gone over the past few days. Those mild downpours were nothing compared to the storm amassing overhead. Even the sounds of rolling thunder did not deter her flight. Now was not the time to be attempting the great dumb escape of 2013, but it was too late. She slipped twice as she ran towards the woods, but did not fall to the ground. If she could make it to the forest, she knew she could hide until he calmed down. Even as these thoughts crossed her mind, she knew that they were folly. What she had seen in his eyes was like nothing she had seen before. It was a complete intolerance. It was primal. It was dangerous. He stopped for a moment as the door swung shut behind her. Thank you so much, Isabel. She had seen the beast in his eyes. She had felt it leap up and shake its cage with a howl that curdled his own blood. If she had done anything other than run, he could have kept the beast contained. Oh, she would definitely pay for the defiance, but nothing like what now awaited her. The house door shutting seemed to trigger the opening of the beast's own cage. The beast is wild and untamed, but not stupid. He had no need to race after her. If simply catching her and dragging her back by her hair was what he wanted, it would have been a fait accompli. No, the beast was more cunning, more ravenous, and absolutely more engaged in the events laid before him. He put on his shoes, grabbed the ever-ready backpack, added some essentials, knife, rope, collar, leash, and stopped briefly at the refrigerator before reaching the door to begin his pursuit. She stopped running and was now trying to be strategic. She had a long skirt, but no shoes, and the rain had started. From the sounds of the thunder, the main part of the storm was approaching. The trees provided some cover from the mild showers just starting, but they would be no match for the fury headed their way. She found a sheltered tree and started thinking about her options. She could return and accept the punishment. That option left her dry and safe from Mother Nature. She could find shelter and wait out the storm. Maybe he would be so worried his outrage would subside. She could just keep going and keep her skin wet but intact. Her heart was still pounding because every time she closed her eyes, she saw it. That look. And she knew there was no right answer. She had to run out of self-preservation. First, she would catch her breath. What is that noise? He looked around to find the source of the whistling before realizing it came from himself. Yes, the beast was loose and on the hunt. How long had he been locked away? How long had he kept the unsuspecting women in his life safe from that side of himself? But the freedom was too intoxicating. He had owned the property for many decades. In fact, his reason for purchasing this piece of land was due to the many adventures he'd had there as a child. He knew the location of every tree, every bush, every ditch, and most importantly, the best way to set traps. He set about his work, continuing to whistle, enjoying these moments leading up to the moments to come. Now he was reveling in these series of fortunate events. Freedom. She had to move. She heard his whistling nearby and stood stock still. When the sounds didn't get closer, she allowed herself time to breathe. Now the sounds were faded, and the rain was coming down harder. Time to move. It seemed safest to go towards the direction of where his sound had originated. After all, he didn't find her in that area, so he must have moved on to look somewhere else. Damn. She hit her toe on a tree root and had to shove a hand in her mouth to keep from screaming. The pain subsided and she looked up to see the remnants of a sack lunch. Well, that certainly made sense. He took a break to eat, of course. He had time to plan. Her escape was immediate. The growl in her stomach and scratch in her throat made her venture closer to see if he had left anything behind. Maybe she'd get lucky and find some water left in a bottle. He rarely finished the whole bottle. Cautiously, She glanced around and moved closer. Her eyes widened in delight. Now he hadn't left water. Right in front of her, she saw an unopened bottle of Diet Coke. The backpack. Yes, the backpack was always ready in case they wanted to go for a hike. He didn't drink Diet Coke, but she did. He packed his necessities, and she had packed hers. The rain was steady, and she noticed the lightning getting closer. Still, she wasn't going to pass up on a Diet Coke. She made her move. Approaching the tree stump upon which it laid, she reached her hand and grabbed the bottle, intending to turn and run back to shelter. The rope sprung tight, locking her legs together and knocking her to the ground before she even realized what had happened. She was caught, trapped like a wild animal. The bottle still held tightly in her hand. She started to sit up when the rope jerked, and she fell backward again. She heard his laugh before she saw him come out from behind the tree. This wasn't a jovial, this is fun type of laugh, more of a silly slut, you have no sense type of laugh. For a brief moment, she wondered if he had calmed down. That idea was squashed when she saw the laugh did not reach his eyes. That look. If she wasn't getting a chill from her rain-soaked clothes, that look would have chilled her blood anyway. Alrighty, a nice start to our story here. We've got 21 pages of this. The story continues with, his teeth came down on her exposed neck as if he wanted to consume her. Her screams infused every cell of his body, making every muscle taut and strengthened. His censored was so hard he could only stave off an orgasm, knowing that he had still work to do. Did you say something, whore? This time his voice was barely a whisper in her ear. Master. She sighed and her body became limp against his form. Say it again, slut. He practically goaded. Master, my master. Her voice had more force to it, but not by much. Again, he commanded as he reached around and pressed his fingers against. Think, pet. No, I think nothing of the kind. His steps were slow and deliberate, like he was purposely increasing her fear. I know who I am and whom I control. He said it with such calm and finality, she knew it to be true. Mustering the last of her resolve, she asked, Mind if I have a drink before you? Well, before whatever it is you think you're going to do? This time the laugh was loud and strong, the outright burst of humor that was completely lost on her. Go ahead. And his stoicism had returned. She lifted the bottle and twisted the cap. It didn't move. She twisted again. Nothing. She lifted her head to look at him quizzically. There she saw that sadistic smile she knew so well, and she understood. Her fear was replaced by fury, and she flung the bottle at him. Really? You glued the bottle shut? Bastard. She missed by a long shot because she was still in a prone position on the ground, feet tied together with the rain soaking her to the bone. He was at her feet before she saw the collar and leash in his other hand. Are we doing this the easy way, slut, or the hard way? He asked almost casually as he held the rope around her feet securely in his hand. With a resigned sigh and a forced tear that could not be seen amongst the rain, she sat up and lowered her head at a sign of defeat. He loosened the rope and moved on to put on the collar. But he was unprepared for what happened next. She kicked her feet free and scrambled in the mud to get to a standing position. He grabbed at her ankle and the tail end of her skirt, but the mud and rain against her skin was just too slippery. She was gone before he had gotten to his feet. She was gone without the skirt. Terror, frustration, fear, confusion. She couldn't differentiate one from the other, but she knew she was in trouble. Terror, because she now recognized the significance of that look. He had mentioned a secret animal he had contained within himself. She had dismissed it as the ego associated with a dominant man within the BDSM scene. You would be hard-pressed to find a dominant meekly defer to a challenge of his dominance. Now she knew. It was no exaggeration. There was no doubt of the feral danger she experienced just moments ago. Frustration because she had failed to be careful. She was not a careless woman. How was it so easy to capture her? She was angry at her own lack of caution. Was there any better way to distract her than Diet Coke? She should have known. How could she be so gullible and reckless? It had almost cost her. Fear, because if the beast should catch her, she knew her fate was more than just a few days of uncomfortable sitting. If the beast caught her, her pleas would go unanswered. If the beast caught her, there would be no mercy. The only thing left for her to do was run. She barely noticed the lack of her skirt, except for the fact that her legs could move freely now. Her strides took form and she was off. Howling. The howling ringing in his head was virtually unbearable. The beast had lost his prize, his catch, his reward. The retribution would be intense. A small consolation eased the ferocity of the beast. Cunning is not so limited as to plan only for one contingency. The plans laid, traps set, were not so easily escaped. Run. That's all she could think. Run. But as with all prey, the instinct to flee exceeded the capacity for reason. Reason would have told her that her challenger was far more devious and cunning than a single trap. Reason would have cautioned her against fleeing in the prescribed direction. Reason could have saved her. Alas, instinct lacked reason, and her horror continued. She threw her hands in front of her to brace the fall. It was similar to the feeling she had just experienced, but different. This time she had collided with a tripped wire or rope of some sort. The unrelenting storm made it impossible to differentiate between the two. All that she knew was that she was heading face first into the mud, and her advance had been impeded by something other than what nature created. Headlong, she flew into the muck and mud of the forest. Even if she had a moment to collect her thoughts, she would not have escaped the additional ropes now encircling her neck, much less the one wrapped around her ankles. Panic set in immediately. How could she get out of this on her own? Wait, her hands were free. Frantically, she grasped at the one encircling her neck. Utter fear gripped her, yet she knew her only chance was escape. She was no match for the visceral animal that pursued her. There was no safe word that could save her. This was real. This was terrifying. This could be her end. Soft chuckling. I love that you're into this shit, by the way. Soft chuckling came from the beast. He was not so easily outmaneuvered by this intelligent and intriguing woman. He had no delusion that she would be captured so easily. In fact, he would have been disappointed if the pursuit had been so short. No, he had accurately assessed his prey and knew she was no ordinary woman. Any advantage, no matter how slight, would be exploited. He knew this. He cherished this. Finally, a worthy prey. His respect and desire increased with every move she made. An opponent to be conquered, a woman who, finally, had earned the attention of the beast, a woman upon whom the beast could be unleashed fully, a woman who deserved that ramifications of the pain and punishment only achieved by the creature released upon her. Fuck, she frantically pulled at the ropes around her neck. She needed to breathe to be able to form her next thought. How could she formulate her escape if she couldn't breathe? To her relief, the noose loosened. If she worked quickly, she could be free. Her retreat would not be so haphazard this time. Yet, before she could remove the rope that strangled her, it's readily evident when you look at him. It's cute. She already knew my nickname. Air. She could breathe freely. But she was already next to her. He would not be so easily tricked by feigned submission. She knew that the beast had taken over her, and her own strength of will was the prize to be won. Would she be able to retain her autonomy? And even if she could, what would the cost be? In futility, she pulled and tugged at the ropes, securing her ankles. She must get free. She must save her body. She must save her soul. Wounds of the flesh would heal. That was a lesson she learned in her childhood. Wounds of the heart, well, the heart does not heal. The heart will bend, break, and be ripped apart, never to be put back together in the same way again. That was the one thing she could not allow to happen. She was the ultimate protector and defender of her heart and soul. Neither man nor beast would make her shirk her responsibility in that respect. Pain might be a cruel mistress, but she was a tolerable mistress. Her heart just could not break again. So she fought. With all her strength of will and muscle, she fought. Fear, obstinacy, and self-preservation all hung on her ability to survive and escape the pain awaiting her, should she be captured. Physical pain she could handle, but the beast didn't need the physical pain. That was just a means to the end. The beast needed, no, he demanded, the emotional pain. The break of her essence that he could lap up like blood from the dying. It was in that blood that he would find his strength and carry her to places she had not yet known. Her fears, her insecurities, her inhibitions, her protections would be annihilated and rebuilt stronger than she could imagine. Yes, she knew the treachery and salvation that combined in front of her. It was not enough. The promise of strength unforeseen could not be challenged by the strength she had produced on her own. He was at her side now. Rain poured over their bodies, yet neither was aware.